Let's get more updates on this development story as Tetteh Kofi, a broadcast journalist, joins me from the UK via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us on World Now. Less than 3 years ago, Boris Johnson led the Conservatives to their biggest election victory since 1987. Now, the Prime Minister has lost the support of his MPs and has consequently resigned. Talk to us about how it came to this.
Well, Boris Johnson was brought in to deliver two things. One, to deliver on Brexit and to take the Tory party on to new heights. In terms of achieving the new heights, Boris was spectacular in his performance. As he himself has said, he had the biggest majority of any Tory government since 1987 and the biggest share of the vote since 1979. He gave Labour a total drubbing at the last outing. But here's the irony. Boris seems to be a man of extremes because just as he delivered those fantastic election results, he has also had the greatest bonfire of resignations of any prime minister in living memory. That was 53 resignations of key senior MPs, including 5 cabinet ministers, and also the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who he himself had appointed just under 48 hours prior. So this is the thing. Actually, I think that to all commentators, it was clear that Boris had lost the fight by the end of last year, coming into January of this year, after all the allegations around Partygate and the way he flouted lockdown rules when he was putting the rest of us citizens of the United Kingdom under very severe restrictions. I think the nation lost faith and confidence in the man at that time. What had to happen, however, was that his parliamentary party needed to see what that meant to the electorate. And when they lost 2 key by-elections, the writing was on the wall. So the fact that Chris Pincher was found actually making inappropriate moves towards a man, basically a sexual malpractice activity, and that this was communicated to the Prime Minister, and that nevertheless he put him in a position of pastoral care for other men and women. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. But actually, the camel had already been heaped with so many woes and burdens up until that time.
Well, looking at the current situation in the UK, inflation has risen sharply in 2022 to the current rate of 9.1%. The government also went ahead with a tax rise in April, and national insurance went up by 1.25 pence to the pound. So in the midst of all of this, how would you describe Boris Johnson in office? Is it successful?
Well, you see, now he's going to have to make some dramatic decisions. Whoever is Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is presiding over something of a welfare crisis for the United Kingdom. Our fuel bills have started crashing in, and the rate of inflation is beginning to bite with everybody. And so anybody who needs to tackle this is going to have to perhaps give more help to the public, making this a policy U-turn on what the Conservative Party has always stood for. A person who makes that kind of decision must have not only the backing of his party, but also the respect of his nation. And I'm afraid that Mr. Johnson has lost both.
Well, Boris Johnson, as we say, won a thumping majority on the back of a clear, easy-to-follow policy that's get Brexit done. But since then, his critics said there was a lack of focus and ideas in Downing Street. He's been repeatedly accused of being an out-of-control shopping trolley, veering from position to position. So do you have the same opinion about him?
You see, Mr. Johnson was always the show boy. He was the person who could, throw a good line and a good speech whenever you needed him to throw a good line and a good speech. He was never a detail man, number one. Number two, Mr. Johnson has always struggled with conveying the truth of a situation to his various publics. He lost 2 jobs because he falsified information. And it turns out that, again, over the Partygate slanders, it turns out that Mr. Johnson wasn't being truthful with the public. So under those circumstances, I think it's very, very difficult for him to continue. He has gone past his sell-by date, and he has been found wanting principally on matters of ethics, to be fair, but also without a grip on the detail that is required to run a country in a post-pandemic situation, especially a country with, as big a world profile as the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely correct to say that Boris Johnson falls short of your expectations. Mr. Johnson intends to, however, continue as Prime Minister until a new leader is in place. So still some of his critics are calling on him to leave number 10 immediately rather than waiting for a successor to be chosen. So could Mr. Johnson go sooner?
Well, you see, it's very likely that he will go sooner, because with the kind of decisions that need to be made, with the kind of divisiveness that's been shown in his government and in Parliament, say in the last 4 or 5 months or so, what you need is a clean broom to sweep out the room and take things forward. You need somebody who is carrying no baggage. And the carrying no baggage is probably as important as whatever talent they bring to the job. It is highly unlikely that Mr. Johnson is going to be able to retain his position as Prime Minister for very long, having resigned the position of leader of the party. The convention is the leader of the party is also the Prime Minister. He can't give himself half a job. He can't create a new position for himself while, they're looking for a new party leader, especially given the fact that we have arrangements under the British Constitution, under the British way of government, for dealing with things like this. The deputy prime minister could seamlessly step into that responsibility, and then all that would be required would be for Boris Johnson to resign and for the new person to take over the conversation with the Queen, and Britain is back on the rails. Right now, Britain is headed for, if he waits till October, we got another 3 months of turmoil in a time when big decisions need to be made.
Well, it remains to be seen how the whole situation would definitely, pan out. And then if he eventually goes or leaves office completely, then we'll see who could replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Thank you very kindly, broadcast journalist Tetteh Kofi. Thank you so much for your insight on this.
My pleasure.